Earlier this year, I reviewed the redesigned Nissan Murano, all new for the first time in about a decade. And at the time, I thought it was a solid buy overall, offering Infiniti-like features and luxury for more mainstream prices. Here we are more than 6 months later, and I'm reviewing the Murano once again. And since the last time I reviewed the Murano, I've driven more than 50 and reviewed more than 50 cars here on the channel. And with all those car reviews comes a lot more experience. Can I still recommend the Murano as a good buy, or should you look at something else? In today's video, we're going to review the Murano, look for deals in my area, see what it's competing against in the market for the price, and then once again evaluate it on the spreadsheet. Underneath the hood of the Murano, you might hear this little 4-cylinder 2-liter turbo ticking away. This provides 241 horsepower and 260 pound-feet of torque. And unlike the previous Murano, it does not have a CVT transmission. This has a true 9-speed automatic, which I think is a nice upgrade. You can get it in front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. This Platinum, of course, has all-wheel drive. There's no longer a V6 option, which is going to sour a lot of people's appetite. However, the Pathfinder still has a V6 in the Nissan lineup. And if memory serves me correct, Nissan actually had a hybrid Murano for a real short period of time over a decade ago. Unfortunately, Nissan has not brought its e-power to the Murano or any Nissans in the US lineup quite yet. That is on the horizon, but Nissan has not made any announcements of whether this Murano will get a hybrid or not. But if you want a hybrid, you can get it in a lot of competitors like the Crown Signia, the CX-70 from Mazda, some very high-end two-row mainstream competitors. Look at this padding here on the hood to silence the chatter of this 4-cylinder. I have additional padding back here. I have padding on top of the battery and lots of foam around the engine compartment to further seal it off. Nissan's done a great job, even more pad over here. They've done a great job reducing the engine noise as much as possible. Nissan's done a lot here, luxury levels of a lot to reduce NVH, but it all just depends on how it drives, right? There's no doubt that this Murano's front end is what is going to potentially sell it for a lot of customers. It doesn't look like anything else on the market. It's been smoothed over. It looks nothing like the old Murano, for better or for worse. We have triple beam LED headlights up top, very premium. The cascading daytime running lights that are built into the grille. It's a very unique and I think a cool looking front end. It might not be for everyone who is into boxy like SUVs, but if you want boxy, you have the Pathfinder, you have the Armada, you have the Rogue, etc. in the Nissan lineup. Parking sensors here on the front of this Platinum model, and this Platinum model comes in at over $53,000. That's luxury prices. Now there are 3 different trim levels in the Murano. SL is the middle grade, SV is the base grade, and this Platinum is the range topper. This Platinum comes with massive 21-inch wheels. The 2 grades below this have 20-inch wheels. We'll see how these affect ride quality and fuel economy here later in the review. On the side of the Murano, we have turn indicators built into these side mirrors. This has the optional 2-tone package with the blacked out roof, glossy window surrounds. And we have, similar to like the Nissan Z, we have this big katana inspired window trim at the top. We have big hips in the rear, and it does very much look like a coupe crossover. But this sort of styling is falling a little bit out of favor in today's market for something more boxy, more rugged looking, more capable looking. This to me kind of screams what was popular more than a decade ago in the luxury segment. If you look at maybe the side profile of a 3rd generation Lexus RX. Like the front end of the Murano, the back end has some very eye-catching styling. Now, light bars aren't anything new, but I like how Nissan has given some real cool pattern to these rear taillights and light bar, and it's a real thick light bar. Murano, huge font in the back, platinum grade all-wheel drive badge back here. You do have a kick sensor. You do have a 360 camera and a backup camera on this, of course, more parking sensors in the back. And I've liked that they've gone the luxury route here. They've tucked up the rear windshield wiper like a Lexus RX underneath the rear spoiler and behind the rear brake light there. There's a button here to lift the lift gate. The Murano, like any crossover, is going to have a ton of cargo space. I don't have a spare tire just to fix a flat kit. The Bose subwoofer in here in the back, kind of in the place of a spare tire. The sound system in here is really, really solid. I think most people are going to be happy with it. And look, just like the engine compartment had a lot of NVH reduction materials, look at this big pillow sitting above this subwoofer here. And the subwoofer styrofoam is sitting on top of more carpet. So Nissan's gone through a lot of intentional material selection to make sure that this Murano's quiet. We have this nice Murano branded carpet here. You can fold down the seats 60/40 as well. You could put a tonneau cover in here if you want. You can fold down the rear seats. You have lights on each side and an optional 12-volt accessory power. If you're 6'2", you're gonna bump your head because I'm just barely making it at 6'1", but I think most people are buying this car probably shouldn't have that issue. Oh, I like these lights. These are the license plate lights, and look how they light up with the lift gate. That's kind of cool. We have optional illuminated scuff plates here at the bottom with the Murano lettering. I think that shows up on the camera. Sunshades here on this top grade. I like the two-door materials here. On the door panel, this is a very high-end door panel with the stitching and the soft touch materials. This has been my seat of choice this week taking the kids to school. There's a lot of leg room back here, a lot of room for the kids to slide from one side to the other. They have vents back here. The AC in this Murano this week has been really, really strong. There's even heated outboard seats on this top trim, USB-Cs back here. These seats, although there's just one mat pocket, these seats are very, very high-end materials. This has semi-aniline leather in the platinum trim where you get leatherette in the lesser trims. These seats in the back are also perforated. Do I have multiple levels of recline? Unfortunately, I don't, but I have a nice cushion here, real high-end cushion with some blue stitching that oftentimes would just be plastic in most vehicles of this class. But again, this is over $53,000. I'm expecting luxury level comfort and amenities, and I am getting that back here, especially with this big panel roof, which is standard, I think, on the SV grade and this platinum grade. We have LED lights above, little map lights, and we also have handles above each window. You may be able to see the ambient lighting in here. It's kind of this pink purple. That's what the girls picked this week. I think most of you at first glance would agree that the Murano, especially in this platinum trim, the interior is very aesthetically pleasing. A nice dome over the dual 12-inch screens, which are standard on the lineup. What does this do? Well, it will shield it from unnecessary glares when you're driving during sunny days. We have the shroud around this dome, which is the nice tan color that flows into high quality materials on the doors. We have this aluminum-like plastic trimming here on the dash, but it's cohesive because we have the same design here on the door panels on the front and the back. We have this faux wood at the very bottom, which looks really, really classy. The vents in here are just in the right position, not too low. Sometimes they get pushed all the way to the bottom with too big of a touchscreen. 12-inch touchscreen is all anyone really needs, in my opinion. This does have Google built in and Android Autos here as well. That's what you guys are looking at right now. I have no issues. There's zero learning curve for me with Nissan software. I have a little rotary dial on the steering wheel. It works great for me to play with the screen here, but I also have the option of using these touch capacitive buttons as well, which they're not really touch capacitive per se. It's a mix between, because the whole panel moves on the steering wheel, but at least there's some topography on these touch capacitive panels here to give your thumb some guidance. Volume here on the left, but I have this big fat volume knob centrally located, and it does seem like this control panel may be slightly faced towards me. And I say control panel here because these buttons that are illuminated, they are not buttons, they are haptic feedback. So if this panel here, this fake wood, vibrates when I press down on it, okay, or hover my finger over it. Now you can smash it to raise it one at a time, or you can press and hold and it will lower the temperature multiple degrees at a time as long as you're holding it down. Not the best panel, but like the Nissan Ariya, which this looks like on the outside and on the inside, like the Nissan Ariya. You get used to it, and the AC in here is pretty fantastic on auto mode, so I'm not too upset about this. Would I prefer physical climate control? Absolutely, but this is not a deal breaker for me. I also have a hidden seek button and forward and backwards track switch here, which is really nice. Oh, let's go ahead and turn that down because that triggered the audio, this Bose sound system, to come on. I have a wireless charger here, 2 USBs. Here is my drive select around glossy black. It's not ideal, but given that the rest of the materials in here are quite good, and I have been not like overly blinded this week from the glossy black in here, it gets a pass. I do have different driving modes, sport, standard, and eco. Cup holders in a great spot. Camera button is in a great spot. Top-down 360 camera is fantastic. This leather-wrapped steering wheel with the baseball stitching is elite. And I'm not joking, like Nissan steering wheels have, not only are they some of the most comfortable with the leather wrapped, their baseball stitching is probably the best in the industry that I've seen. That includes any luxury steering wheel that I've seen. Sometimes a crisscross pattern that's very common, it's really hard to do right, but the baseball stitching here just looks so good. I guess I'll take a picture or some B-roll because I really geek out. I just am a huge fan of how it looks and how clean it is and how expertly crafted this steering wheel is with this stitching. On the left-hand side, I have a heated steering wheel button, some accent lighting control, as well as a head-up display button. The head-up display in here is pretty good. It's a little offset, but it's crisp, clear, and it does give me turn-by-turn with my Android Auto. Auto folding mirrors, memory seats, radar cruise control, all that cool stuff. I think I'm ready to start driving the Murano. This is a funny thing to start a review with, but it's what I started the review on the EX90 Volvo last week, which was windshield wipers. Almost dead silent here. This is how windshield wipers are to be done. The only complaint I have with the windshield wipers is there's not an intermittent setting. There's only an auto, a medium setting, or sorry, that's auto. Here's the medium setting, and then there's a high setting. There's not a intermittent where I have control over how fast it goes, which I prefer that over auto. I'm not a big fan of auto windshield wipers, and it's the same with these. All right, so but at least they're quiet, they're easier to operate than that $90,000 Volvo that I drove last week. Also, the rear windshield wiper has a control in the same stock, easy to use. The issue with looking out the back, and I think I forgot to mention this in my last Murano review, the visibility out the back is very limited. The rear windshield's pretty small, and then it's angled at as such, at least for me, because I'm tall, I sit up high. If you don't sit up as high in this vehicle, maybe it doesn't bother you. I can't see very far out of the back unless I angle this rear view mirror at a very strange angle, which even limits my rear visibility even more. It's not a deal breaker. It's not nearly as bad as something like the Volvo EX30 or whatever that vehicle is called. Hazards here are right next to the volume knob. We're gonna do a 0 to 60. I got the drag meter out. We'll see what this little 2-liter is capable of. Sport mode, let's see here. I'm in sport mode now. We're going to torque brake. Taking off the hazards. Pretty decent. 0 to 60 in 7.27. When it's at full tilt, this vehicle doesn't feel slow. This little well, let's take it out of sport mode because it holds those revs, and then you get a lot of, I wouldn't say harshness, but you do feel and hear that 4-cylinder get a bit buzzy at times, if you're in sport mode especially. But most of the time you don't really feel or hear the engine, which is pretty good. It's one of the smoothest 4-cylinder turbos I think I've tested. All right, so 7.27 0 to 60, I think that's adequate for this vehicle, and 7.7 essentially to 100 kilometers per hour. So happy with the 0 to 60, but the 0 to 60 doesn't tell the full tale of this engine. The issues I have with it is that when you're at about 50% pedal, it doesn't give you half the power. It gives you what it feels like maybe 15% of the 240 horsepower. So like a lot of modern cars, everything is so emissions focused or fuel economy focused that you can't get anywhere close to this. Lexus could have used a blinker there. Old GS 300 there. Yeah, the power delivery is not linear. So I'm pressing the power like 10%, nothing's happening. Here's what I'd say 25%, nothing more happens. Here's 50%. Now I feel like I'm getting 10% of the power at 50% of the gas pedal. And this is something, at least with most of Nissan CVTs, I know this doesn't have a CVT, but hear me out. I feel like the CVT and the V6 on the old Murano didn't have this, all the playfulness zapped out of it. If you pressed on the pedal, it would give it to you. All right, when I'm pressing on the pedal, it does a downshift, but I have no get up and go unless my foot is all the way down. And this is not necessarily the Murano's fault. It is, technically, but this is happening in so many cars I drive now, from a base Corolla to a Tucson non-hybrid. And if the Nissan Murano had a hybrid, they wouldn't have to tune all the throttle response out of it. There's zero throttle response unless you're essentially full go. And it's just unfortunate because this engine is not going to get a fair rap. A lot of people I've heard with this Murano say like it feels underpowered. Well, my 0 to 60 says it's not underpowered. But when you need the power most of the time, or when you expect the power, the Murano just doesn't give it to you because it's been sapped out of this vehicle's capabilities due to emissions regulations. And that's why the V6 is no longer here, because of CAFE or EPA reasons. And it's just unfortunate. We're going to talk about something else about this powertrain. As I throw it around the turn and I need that power, it's there 50-50 most of the time, especially if I'm coming down at speed, meaning I'm catching a green arrow here in Florida, because those are the only turns I have. The transmission really doesn't downshift to get me in the proper gear. There's a nice Lucid there. It doesn't downshift to get me in the proper gear. So when I'm ready to start accelerating out of a turn, I'm in way too high of a gear. And so I have to smash the gas pedal, and then it gives me, well, like 4 downshifts, and then it gives me all the power. And so I go from being a turtle to a hare within a split second, and it's not a good experience most of the time powering out of turns. Now, I do have paddle shifters, I can override that, but the automatic transmission here, while on paper, it's a win over the CVT. Longevity, it's a win over the CVT. Maintenance, it's a win over the CVT. But in everyday driving, it actually, I think, is worse than the CVT. In fact, the Nissan Kicks, which only has like 150 horsepower, is more responsive. When I get into that gas pedal, it gives me exactly what I'm expecting, unlike the Murano, which all of it's locked away with the sort of tuning that's been put into the vehicle. Now that I've talked everything about this powertrain and its behavior, what about the fuel economy? Well, that's not going to help this vehicle either. The fuel economy I'm getting is like the like 22, 23, I would say, on average, and that's mainly in town. So not great fuel economy when a lot of the competition has hybrids, for example. It is very quiet in here. I can hear the car next to me, the little CHR has its window down blaring the radio, but I do have acoustic windows in here. It is a very quiet car. Like I said, that 4-cylinder is almost completely silent, unless, you know, your foot's really heavy into the accelerator. So very smooth operation. It's a luxury car smooth, I would say. And it would be even smoother with the 20-inch wheels. So the comfort is also excellent. These seats are great. I have massaging seats here, which I've been using extensively. It only massages my back, not my bum, but I'll take it. I'll take the massaging seats, and I think also the front passenger seat is massaging too. And the heated and ventilated seats are hidden in the touchscreen. I wish I had physical buttons for them, but it's not a deal breaker. You can put it on auto and it'll get the job done 9 times out of 10. Again, comfort is just, it's fantastic. It's quiet, it's smooth, it's luxury-like, and it's cruising. It likes to cruise. Like I said, I have issues with its performance when accelerating especially, but in terms of cruising, this Murano is really, really good. All right, so if you're just driving long distances and you don't have a lot of stop and go, I think the Murano would be perfectly fine for most people. But I do most of my driving in city, so I need it to be responsive. I need the engine to be responsive, and the Murano is a letdown there. Kind of like the Rogue is a letdown there. The Rogue is also a really good vehicle in just about every regard except for the powertrain. Now this powertrain is better than the Rogues, but not by much. And it's hard for me to say because it has so much more power, but again, it's locked away most of the time unless you're pedal to the metal. And I can't believe I'm saying this, I would rather buy an SR Kicks, which is like $25,000. It's half the price of this, an SR Kicks. It doesn't have quite the same level of comfort, but it has the same level of tech, and it is just a very fuel efficient. It's like 30 plus miles per gallon in that thing minimum. Like, you could just get really good fuel economy in that. And the Kicks, I think it looks better than the Murano. It's very spacious, not quite as spacious, but close. It's half the price, like I said, and the little CVT and the little 4-cylinder give me what I want when I want it, despite it having about 100 horsepower less than this. It is still more peppy and more fun to drive than the Murano. Riddle me that. Let's talk about handling. The Murano handles quite well, and maybe these 21-inch wheels help, but the handling is surprising. It's not like it's meant for that, but Nissans are typically more fun than you would expect when you throw it in the turns. But again, like I said, when you want to go power out of the turn, a lot of the time you're just not in the right gear, and then it's just not a good experience accelerating out of a turn. But the handling is pretty decent, and if you're willing to work the paddle shifters, maybe you can overcome the automatic transmission's logic being a failure. Yeah, see, it just took forever to downshift to get around that Civic there. But if you're willing to work the paddle shifters, maybe you can get around all of that, the failures or the shortcomings of the logic of this 9-speed auto. I like this 9-speed auto. It's smooth, but it's just not tuned right. And I haven't talked about the brakes. We'll get into the brakes here. That looks like an undercover cop, so that looks sketchy. But the brakes are pretty good in the Murano. It's pretty dull like the gas pedal, but once you get about halfway through, you get some nice feedback, some nice linearity, and it does come to a stop quite well. So the brakes, I have no issue here in the Murano. Let's go ahead and get in the office with the Murano. Let's see what deals can be had in my area. Let's compare it to the competitors. Would I pick this over any of the competitors? And we will put it back on the spreadsheet. Will it get downgraded? I've downgraded a few vehicles this year after revisiting them. The Acura ADX is one of those vehicles I have revisited and downgraded it. Looking for Muranos in my area, it is astounding how many there are. There are almost 1,000 within 150 miles of me. And we know this vehicle doesn't sell as well as the Sentra, or not anymore anyways. It used to sell maybe 80, 90,000 a year in the late 2010s or something like that. But we have a high volume of Muranos and a low demand for them. So getting a deal on a Murano is going to be easy to do. I went from going from the Murano was a good buy, and it does a lot of things. It does a luxury really well, but it's just too expensive in my opinion. And the Platinum, you can get an SV Murano for $35K. I think that's a good buy. But honestly, for that sort of money, I would rather save 10 grand and get a Kicks. Let me show you a Kicks SR. For example, that's the top grade. Get a Kicks SR for $25K. Way better deal. Way more fun to drive. Way better fuel economy. Looks just as good, in my opinion, as the Murano. And I know it's not quite as big. You can get available all-wheel drive on this thing too. Is it slower? Yes. But I'm telling you, it's more responsive and it's more enjoyable to drive on a day-to-day basis, despite it having a CVT, despite it having 100 less horsepower. The Kicks is a better car than the Murano.
The Nissan Pathfinder, also a better car than the Murano. This has a same 9-speed auto as the Murano, but it has the V6. And the V6 in here is a much better engine than the 2-liter turbo in the Murano. And you get an extra third row seats, and it looks better than the Murano. And it costs less than a Murano. All right, so Pathfinder, easy buy, easy recommendation over the Murano. Another vehicle within the Murano's class would be the Crown Signia. And look, this is about the same price. And in fact, you can get them discounted $4,000 off of MSRP here because it's Lexus-like pricing for a Toyota. The engine isn't, believe it or not, it's not as smooth despite it being a hybrid. This is on an older hybrid setup, and Toyota didn't do a great job reducing the buzziness of this which is complete opposite of the Murano. The Murano does a good job at making a smooth powertrain. The Crown Signia has a better powertrain objectively. It's just as quick as the turbo, but you get 20 miles per gallon better, something like that. Not quite. You get about 40 miles per gallon here. So about 16 miles per gallon better, almost double the fuel economy. And the Crown Signia looks way better than the Murano, and it's a wagon, which I'm a huge sucker for. So if you're spending over $45,000, definitely look at the Crown Signia. It's a better vehicle. The Mazda CX-70, also a better vehicle than the Murano. Now, it is a little bit bigger, but it is a 2-row, way more fun to drive. Rear-wheel drive bias, inline 6. You can get it with a plug-in hybrid if you want. Inline 6, look, $47K for Turbo Premium Plus. It's $5,000 off of MSRP. This is a better buy than the Murano. Okay, not even close. It's not even close. Not even close. Also, I know this is a little bit smaller than a Murano, but if you're looking at a Platinum Murano, unless you're getting like $5,000+ off, I don't think it's a good. There's just so many better options out there. In fact, I'd be happy to spend a little bit more money on a better vehicle for that price. And look, you can get an NX hybrid, very efficient, very quiet. This fixes the refinement that's lacking, I guess you could say, on the Crown Signia. It's much better here on the Lexus NX. It's very smooth, very quiet, 40 miles per gallon. And you get that Lexus badge instead of a Nissan badge for the same price. Like who would, honestly pick a Nissan in that case over a Lexus when it costs the same? I know it's a hair smaller. I know the Murano is more like an RX size, but this, I'm telling you, is as much space as most people need. Now, the Murano on the inside is nicer than the NX. I will give it to them, but I'd be happier to have that Lexus experience over the Murano if the price is about the same and get better fuel economy. So let's pull up the spreadsheet. So where am I going to put the Murano? As we go back to my February review of the Murano, it was right here. And keep in mind, just because it's in B category doesn't mean it's better than like a Nautilus or something, right? B category just means solid buy. They're not ranked top to bottom, for example. They're just thrown into the B category. There's no order to B category. So now that that's out of the way, can I still say that the Murano let's just delete it out of here. Can I say that it's better than an Infiniti? Well, in some ways, of course, but that's like the Infiniti's trash right now besides the QX80. So, where does it fall? Is it a solid buy? And I don't think it is for me. For some people out there, it might be, but it's still too expensive. If you get a really good deal, 4 or 5K minimum off of MSRP, then it's a solid buy. But even at those prices, there's so many other cars that I would rather have. In fact, like I said, I would rather take a really nice Nissan Kicks, which costs $25K, sometimes less, depending on what grade you want to get. All right. And get better fuel economy and a more peppy experience. Or I would get a Nissan Pathfinder. I haven't driven one, but if I had driven one this year, it'd probably fall somewhere under A category because it's such a good deal, great discounts to be had on it, V6, and it looks cool. I think I'm dropping it down. I'm dropping it down to fire sale only. Let's put it next to the Nissan Rogue, a little bit above it. Again, there's no order. It's just kind of in this experience as a fire sale only. You know, one of my viewers says they have a family member that has the old V6 Murano, and they also have the new Murano with the VC turbo, and they drive the old one more than the new one. And my guess is because even though it has a CVT, which a lot of people demonize, that V6 offers a better experience and a more peppy and more predictable experience. The Murano's programming with the 9-speed auto is unpredictable, and it's not really in tune with the driver at all. And that's really the downfall of this vehicle. It's a huge flaw. And no hybrids, a huge flaw. Poor fuel economy, huge flaw. High price tag, huge flaw. The powertrain flaw on here is so big in today's market that regardless of how much it does well, the Murano, features, looks, styling, smoothness, comfort, no matter how well that does, you're just always reminded of a bad driving experience with the poor programming of the 9-speed auto mixed with the VC turbo. I don't mind the VC turbo. I think it's a smooth and torquey engine, but like I said, you have to pretty much be pedaled down to enjoy the VC turbo for what it's worth. And that's why I think the old Murano may have been a better driving experience. And just get a Pathfinder with a V6, get a Nissan Kicks and save a boat ton of money. And I haven't even mentioned the Rogue, because the Rogue also falls into this category here of just these cars have to be discounted so much because they're not as good as most of the competition. And it comes down to their powertrain from Nissan. It comes down to the powertrain here from Hyundai with this Tucson. All right, the QX50 powertrain, well, I mean, this vehicle had so many issues, the QX50. Acura ADX, it got downgraded as I went on in this year because it just does not provide a good driving experience from a powertrain perspective versus Hondas that are way cheaper, which is within the same Acura DNA, and you can't. It's not available a Honda hybrid or a Honda decent automatic. All right, the CVT here is not good. All right, and that vehicle is also too expensive for what it offers. So, anyways, yeah, the Murano has been downgraded, and it hurts me because I enjoy the Murano, especially when it's cruising. But the second I have to interact with that transmission, it is not a good experience, and I just want to get out of it. And so I'll see you guys in the comments. Let me know what you think. Am I too hard on the Murano? I don't think so. Nissan's been blasted by me and just about everyone else out there in the world for a lack of e-power hybrids, a lack and using CVTs too much. And this VC turbo, I haven't even mentioned it, but it's on recall on a lot of vehicles. So I would only think about leasing it. If you can get a Murano for a dirt cheap lease deal, then it's probably a decent buy. But again, it's not fun to drive. It's smooth, comfortable, and if you just plan on driving around like a snail, you're not going to have any of the issues with the powertrain. But that one time you need the powertrain to be there for you, it might not be there, and it's a terrible experience when that happens. Thank you guys for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.